I'm Karen Sperling. This is a photo by Sam Rivera and a painting I did based on it with my new Artistry Corel Painter Brushes Volume 10. I used as my inspiration the paintings of Giovanni Boldini, who painted portraits in Paris in the late 1800s. His style consisted of motion brushstrokes, textures, and accent strokes. In this video, I'll show you the new brushes in my Volume 10 collection and how to paint with them to emulate Boldini's style. The brushes are available at the artistrymag.com website, along with the previous 9 brush collections, both individually and in bundles. Brush Color 1 is a good brush for putting down broad color, and I had in mind the kinds of brush strokes that you see in the image on the right by Boldini. Painting with Brush Color 2 adds texture to those broad brush strokes that you just created, as you see here. With Brush Color 3, you can add some opaque brush strokes, like you see here. Use Brush Color 4 to soften some of the effects you've done so far. It paints with some nice texture, looking like these strokes over here. Sometimes, as you see here in this painting, Boldini used some very thick, dark paint. So Brush Color 5 lets you paint with those thick strokes. And you see that as you put down color, it has the variations that you see, and you can add to those textures as you paint by choosing different colors. And then you see that there are extra textures above that dark texture. You can go back to the Brush Color 2, choose a lighter color, and add some texture. Brush Color 6 is useful for painting clothing and also painting skin. And the way it works is you lift and paint and lift and paint to apply color. And if you paint with a continual stroke, you blend color. So it gives you a nice oil painted kind of a look. Going to raise the size slider a little bit for this. There we go. It's also useful for this kind of stroke, these horizontal strokes. Brush color 7 is useful for this sort of area down here where it's kind of smooth, but then it gets a little bit textured. And so you can paint with this brush first to get a little bit of that smoothness going, and then go back in and paint with like a brush color 2 to add some texture back in again. I'm just going to go back and forth, choose another little blue, then go back to 2 and add a little bit of texture again. So it starts to look like that part in there. Brush color 8 is a little subtle texture brush for little subtle textures like here. If I paint with white, you'll see what's going on with it, see? So if you choose a color close to what's there, you get a subtle texture. Brush color 9 is a bolder version of brush color 8. If I choose 8 and I don't change the color in the color panel, you'll see that it's a very subtle kind of effect. And if I choose brush color 9 without changing the color in the color panel, I get more of the color from the color panel. So it's a good way to add some subtle texture, first by painting with brush 8 and then adding to it with brush 9. Brush color 10 is good for clothing, and it lets you add short bursts of color. I'm painting and then continuing to drag the stylus so it blends after it puts down the first amount of color. Brush 11 is a cool texture brush. If I use a very light color, you'll see what it's doing. This is pressing lightly, and this is pressing heavily. So if I use the colors in the background, it's just a great way to add some nice texture. Also, if you look at the Baldini painting, he has these motion lines for clothing, and that's what I did on my painting. I used motion lines to depict the clothing, and I used this brush, pressing lightly to get these lines. And how I decided to put the lines was by turning on tracing paper and seeing where my areas of light and dark were in the photograph, and painting where I saw highlights. And in this way, I got some motion lines. Brush color 12 is a smooth brush, and it's more solid than the others. There's no texture, so it's useful if you need to do some touch-up and you just want a smooth brush to do it with. Brush Blender 13 blends using these sort of motion brush strokes. Brush Blender 14 puts back some smoothness while leaving some texture, like you see in this area here. Giving you some interesting variety. Brush Blender 15 has nice bristly strokes, great for blending clothing and skin in a painterly way. Brush Blender 16 is a great texture blender for adding texture in the background. Brush Blender 17 blends with a combination of smoothness and texture, making it great for blending skin. Brush Blender 18 is also good for blending skin. It has a different kind of a texture than the previous brush, and creates a great effect. Brush Cloner 19 clones information from the source photo in a painterly way. So you can bring in information from the source in a very impressionistic way with this brush. Brush Cloner 20 is a realistic cloner that you can use to restore any part of the photograph that you would like. So if you went a little crazy with your texturing, you can always bring back the photograph with Brush Cloner 20. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Volume 10 Artistry Corel Painter brushes available at my website, artistrymag.com. For information about how to paint portraits, landscapes, and composites in Corel Painter, get Painting for Photographers Volume 3, available in print at Amazon and at my website, and in ebook format at my website. Thanks for watching.